Discover the hidden secrets of the Book of John in 2025. If there's one book in the Bible that feels like stepping into the heartbeat of heaven itself, it's the Gospel of John. While Matthew, Mark, and Luke tell us what Jesus did, John tells us who Jesus truly is. His words pull back the veil and let us see the Son of God in his full glory, not just a teacher, not just a miracle worker, but the Word made flesh, walking among us, full of grace and truth. And as we step into 2025 with a world spinning faster than ever, John's message feels alive again, urgent, personal, and deeply prophetic. John wasn't writing from a distance. He was the one who leaned on Jesus' chest at the Last Supper, who stood at the foot of the cross when others had run away, who saw the empty tomb and believed. His gospel is not a collection of stories, it's a living testimony from someone who walked beside the light of the world, and that same light still reaches out to you and me today. In this journey, we're not just studying words on a page, we're uncovering the heartbeat of Jesus himself. We'll explore mysteries hidden for generations, the meaning behind his miracles, the divine purpose of his conversations, the love that never fails, and the resurrection power that still shakes the darkness. Because the Gospel of John was never meant to be ancient history, it was written so that you may believe, and in believing, find life in his name. So open your heart as we dive deep into the book that reveals eternity. The same Jesus who spoke to John 2,000 years ago is still speaking now, in this very moment, calling you to see, to believe, and to live. Part 1. The Word became flesh. Before there was light, before there was time, before the world ever drew its first breath, there was the Word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. John starts not with a manger in Bethlehem, but with eternity itself. He reaches beyond creation to show us that Jesus didn't start in Mary's womb. He was, and is, and always will be. Every sunrise, every heartbeat, every breath of wind exists because of him. And yet, that same eternal Word chose to step down into human skin, to walk among his creation as one of us. Imagine that the God who spoke galaxies into existence, now stooping low enough to touch the dust of our world. He didn't come as a ruler on a throne, but as a carpenter in a forgotten village. He walked our roads, felt our hunger, wept our tears. The Creator became a son of man, so that humanity could once again become sons and daughters of God. That's the heartbeat of John's opening, heaven invading earth through humility. When John says, "The Word became flesh and dwelt among us," the original phrase means, "He pitched his tent among us." Just as God's presence once filled the tabernacle in the wilderness, now his glory walked in human form through the dusty streets of Galilee. Every step Jesus took was a revelation of divine love. Every word he spoke was eternity breaking into time. And in a world that still feels dark, lonely, and fractured, that truth matters more than ever. Jesus didn't come for perfect people. He came for real people. He came for the confused, the broken, the forgotten. He came for you. The same Word that created the stars still whispers life into hearts that feel lost. In 2025, when technology tries to replace truth and noise drowns out peace, John reminds us that the Word still speaks. Jesus isn't an old story to be studied. He is a living presence to be encountered. The question isn't whether he is near, it's whether you're listening, because the same Word that once said, "Let there be light," is still shining into every corner of darkness today. Part 2. The miracles that reveal his nature. The Gospel of John doesn't call Jesus' miracles miracles. John calls them signs, because each one points to something deeper, something eternal. They weren't random acts of wonder. They were divine revelations of who Jesus truly is. Every sign in John's Gospel carries a message, a whisper from heaven saying, "This is what God is like." The first sign happens quietly at a wedding in Cana. No thunder, no spectacle, just water turned into wine. But beneath that simple act lies a divine truth. Jesus brings transformation where there is emptiness. He takes what's ordinary and makes it extraordinary. He turns lack into abundance. It's his gentle way of saying, "I've come to bring joy back into human life." Then comes the healing of the nobleman's son, the paralyzed man by the pool, the feeding of the 5,000, the walking on water, the giving of sight to the blind, and finally the raising of Lazarus from the dead. Each miracle unfolds like a window into God's heart. The blind see because Jesus is the light of the world. The hungry are fed because he is the bread of life. The dead rise because he is the resurrection and the life. These signs weren't just ancient wonders. They were living symbols of what Jesus still does today. He still turns emptiness into purpose. He still heals hearts that have been crippled by guilt or fear. He still walks on the storms of our lives and brings peace where chaos once ruled. The miracles of John are not only reminders of what Jesus did, they are promises of what he still does. Every sign leads us to one question: do you believe? Not just in what he can do, but in who he is. Because belief isn't merely agreeing that Jesus performed miracles, it's trusting that he can perform one in you. The Gospel of John was written so that every reader might look at these signs and say, "That's my Savior." And if you listen closely in 2025, you can still hear the echo of those miracles today, because the same Jesus who raised Lazarus is still calling people out of their tombs of hopelessness, still turning water into wine, still making the blind see. The signs never stopped. They've just taken on a new form in the transformed lives of those who believe. Part 3. The Conversations That Changed the World. If you truly want to understand the heart of Jesus, look at the way he spoke to people. John's Gospel captures intimate conversations that reveal how deeply he understands the human soul. Each encounter is more than a story. It's a mirror, reflecting our own questions, fears, and longings. Take Nicodemus, for example, a respected religious leader, confident in his knowledge, yet quietly lost. He came to Jesus at night, afraid of what others might think, and in the dark, Jesus spoke of light, of being born again, not by flesh, but by the Spirit. Nicodemus couldn't understand it at first, but Jesus wasn't talking about rules or rituals. He was talking about rebirth, a new beginning that only heaven can give. Through this private meeting, we learn that faith isn't inherited, it's reborn. Then there's the Samaritan woman at the well, a woman burdened by shame, hiding from her past. Yet Jesus meets her in the heat of the day, not to condemn her but to reveal her worth. "If you knew who I am," he tells her, "you would ask me for living water." She came for water and left with a river of grace. One conversation turned her from an outcast into a messenger who brought an entire village to faith. John also records the healing of the man born blind, not just a miracle, but a revelation. Jesus opened his eyes, and in doing so, exposed the blindness of those who thought they could see. The story isn't just about physical sight. It's about recognizing truth when it stands before you. And the same Jesus still opens spiritual eyes today, helping us see what really matters. Then there's Mary and Martha, grieving their brother Lazarus. They believed in Jesus' power, but thought he was too late. Yet Jesus looks at them and declares, "I am the resurrection and the life." And moments later, the tomb is opened and death is defeated. That's the message of John's Gospel. Jesus doesn't just comfort us in loss, he conquers it. In each of these moments, Jesus doesn't speak from a distance. He steps into the mess of human life with truth and compassion. He meets people where they are and leads them to where they're meant to be. And that hasn't changed. In 2025, he still meets people in quiet conversations, in their doubts, in their loneliness, in their private prayers. You might not hear his voice with your ears, but your heart will know it when it comes. Because the same Jesus who spoke to Nicodemus and the woman at the well is still speaking today, whispering life into the hearts of those who dare to listen. Part 4. The Love That Never Fails. If there's one theme that radiates through the Gospel of John, it's love, pure, unbreakable, divine love. John was known as the disciple whom Jesus loved, not because Jesus loved him more, but because John never got over it. He built his entire identity on that love. And through his eyes, we see love not as an emotion, but as the very essence of who Jesus is. In the upper room, on the night before his crucifixion, Jesus does something that silences heaven. The Creator kneels before his creation and begins to wash their feet. The King of Glory, holding the hands that will soon nail him to a cross, wipes the dust from their skin. It's a love that humbles itself, that serves instead of ruling. And then he says, "As I have loved you, so you must love one another." That's not a suggestion, it's a commandment. "A new commandment I give you," Jesus says, "that you love one another as I have loved you." This isn't ordinary love, it's sacrificial love. It loves when it's not returned. It forgives when it's betrayed. It chooses compassion over revenge. And, in a time when our world is filled with division, John's message strikes like lightning through the noise. Love is still the greatest power on earth. Then comes Jesus' high priestly prayer in John 17, a glimpse into the Saviour's heart. He prays not only for his disciples, but for every believer across all generations. "That they may be one," he says, "just as you and I are one." Imagine that Jesus praying for unity, for his followers to live in the same love that binds the Father and the Son. That's the kind of love heaven recognizes. Even at the cross, love never left. Hanging between heaven and earth, Jesus looks down and entrusts his mother to John's care. In his final moments, he was still thinking of others. That's divine love, love that gives until it has nothing left to give, and then gives more. John understood that the proof of discipleship isn't in miracles or eloquence, it's in love, and that love still calls us higher in 2025. It challenges us to love people who disagree with us, to forgive those who hurt us, and to serve those who can give us nothing in return. Because when love reigns, Jesus is revealed. In the end, the Gospel of John isn't just telling us about Jesus' love, it's inviting us to live it. To let it become the air we breathe, the reason we move, the answer to a world that's forgotten how to care. This love never fails, never fades, and never ends. It is the light that the darkness cannot overcome. Part 5. The Cross, the Tomb, and the Resurrection Glory. Everything in the Gospel of John leads to this moment, the cross. From the opening words, "In the beginning was the Word," to the raising of Lazarus, every miracle, every conversation, every act of love points here. The cross isn't a tragedy, it's the climax of divine purpose. John doesn't describe it with despair but with reverence, because he understood that the cross wasn't where Jesus was defeated. It was where he triumphed. At Calvary, heaven and hell faced each other. The Son of God hung between two worlds, the eternal and the mortal, the holy and the broken. And there, with his final breath, Jesus declared, "It is finished." Not, "I am finished," but it the work of salvation, the debt of sin, the power of death. Finished. Every prophecy fulfilled, every sin paid for, every chain shattered. The moment he bowed his head, the world was forever changed. John alone records that after Jesus' death, his side was pierced, and blood and water flowed out. It's not just a detail, it's a symbol. The blood speaks of atonement, the water speaks of cleansing. Together they proclaim the full redemption of the human soul washed and restored through the sacrifice of the Lamb. Then comes the dawn. The tomb is empty. The stone has been rolled away, not so Jesus could leave, but so we could see. Mary Magdalene, the woman once broken by sin and shame, becomes the first witness of the resurrection. The one who was once bound in darkness is now the first to behold eternal light. Jesus calls her by name, Mary, and in that single word, heaven's victory becomes personal. When Jesus appears to his disciples, he doesn't scold them for running away. He breathes on them and says, "Peace be with you." That's grace in its purest form, the risen Savior offering peace to those who failed him. Then he turns to Thomas, the doubter, and invites him to touch his wounds. "Stop doubting and believe," he says. And Thomas, overwhelmed, replies, "My Lord and my God." In that confession lies the heart of the gospel. Jesus is not just a teacher or prophet. He is God revealed. Finally, John ends with Peter, the disciple who denied Jesus 3 times. By the sea, Jesus restores him, not with rebuke but with a question, "Do you love me?" 3 times he asks, and 3 times Peter answers, undoing his past failure with love. That's redemption. That's restoration. That's Jesus. The cross, the tomb, and the resurrection. This is the heartbeat of John's Gospel. It tells us that no matter how deep our sin runs, grace runs deeper. No matter how dark the night, light will always rise. The same Jesus who conquered death still breathes life into those who believe. Conclusion: that you may believe. The Gospel of John ends with a purpose statement that has echoed for 2,000 years. These things are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. Every chapter, every verse, every miracle, and every tear leads to that truth. John wasn't trying to impress us with divine power. He was trying to introduce us to divine love. He wanted us to see Jesus not just as a historical figure, but as the living Word, the Creator who became our Redeemer. And that revelation changes everything. In 2025, when so many voices compete for our attention, John's Gospel calls us back to the one voice that truly matters, the voice that says, "Come, follow me." It's an invitation to relationship, not religion, to faith, not fear, to life, not survival. John shows us a Savior who weeps at tombs, who washes feet, who forgives traitors, who dies for sinners, and who rises to give them new life. That's the Jesus he knew. And that's the Jesus who's still here, reaching out through the noise of the modern world, calling your name. If you've ever wondered whether your story still matters, look to John. Because the same God who turned fishermen into apostles and a broken woman into a messenger is still writing stories today. Your life is not beyond redemption. Your heart is not too far gone. The light that shone in Galilee still shines in you. So as we close this journey through the book of John, remember this. The gospel isn't an old story, it's a living promise. The word still speaks. The Spirit still moves. The tomb is still empty, and Jesus is still calling you to believe. Let his love be the light that guides you through the shadows. Let his truth be the anchor that holds you steady in the storm. And may you discover, like John did, that once you truly see Jesus for who he is, you'll never be the same again.